how about if we just be a little informal and do question and answers? You can feel free to ask any questions about Zen that you have, and I'll feel free not to answer them.
I'll jump in. Peter, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Buddha nature and particularly how that relates to self or non-self, I guess is really where my question's around.
Okay.
And maybe my first question, what is Buddha nature? Make sure I understand correctly.
But let's start with an easy question. What is Buddha nature? Buddha nature is this very reality without varnish, without ornamentation, without all the cognitive schemas, the likes and dislikes, all of the things that we impose upon the world. And moreover, when we really see that clearly and deeply, we see that the other aspect of it, Buddha nature, is that this is one body. That all the separations that we believe exist, all the distinctions that we believe exist, don't exist. This is truly one body, and that's a concept that we really can't really wrap our heads around intellectually in a very meaningful way. But the sort of intellectual way of understanding it is the idea of interconnectedness that Thich Nhat Hanh came up with, right? And we can see those chains of interconnectedness. We can see those chains of being, right? So nothing exists independently. Nothing can exist independently. A tree needs the earth and the sky and the water and, endless, and so it's an endless chain of beings ultimately that's connected in that sense. But stop this thing from dinging. But that's beyond that is it's far more intimate than that. It really is that there are no separations, that you and I are no different, that we are part any more than our toes are not part of the same body as our fingers. Our toes and fingers are very different, but they're part of the same body. They are completely codependent, right? I mean, the various parts of our body need all the other parts of our body to exist. If we cut off a finger, it's no longer a live finger, right? So there's this interdependence, this codependence between all beings, all life, and the distinctions only exist here. The separations only exist here. Okay. So the Buddha, recognizing Buddha nature is recognizing that the fundamental nature of ourselves and of all beings. Is that as clear as mud?
Well, I think it definitely helps me. I felt like so is Buddha nature basically reality? Like it sounded like you were describing like emptiness and non-separation, like which I just describe as, I guess, like trying to get my head around that as being reality. And that's like, I didn't have Buddha nature as reality in my head, to be honest with you. I thought it was something more like, we all have love in our heart.
Okay, well, let's come to that part. But yes, it's reality.
Okay.
And moreover, it's, we have this identity of relative and absolute. So that's sort of the absolute reality. And there's also the relative reality. And in the relative reality, you are John Scott, I am Peter, and we have identities, we have selves, and we in fact need those things to function in the world. If we were, purely immersed in the absolute, and there are times when we can be, we couldn't function in the world. We've got to be our individuated selves to, get dressed and go to work in the morning, and, all the things that we do. So, and in fact, what we learn is that the two things are absolutely indivisible. We talk about relative and absolute, but there is no relative and absolute. There's this, they're the same, two sides of the same coin. Right? And so in the same way, you can't have the heads and the tails of a quarter separate. The relative and the absolute cannot be separated, and yet they are different, and yet we experience them that way sometimes. So if we have, now I'm getting getting out in the Gulf, next to the perilous rocks. What we talk about when we talk about Kensho or Satori is that experience of the absolute, of the oneness, right? And the reason that's dangerous, because we tend to think that's better than the other. We tend to attach to that. Okay, and in all candor, I mean, that experience can be very powerful, very ecstatic sometimes. Okay, and that furthers that attachment, that desire to attach. But at the end, we have to let it go, because it's all the same thing, and one is not better than the other. And we need them both. They can't be separated. In that little piece I sent around this week, I forget the name of the teacher who wrote that, but he's encouraging people to forget about Satori. I agree with him. Forget about Satori. And yet, that encounter with the absolute is important, because it takes this out of the abstract, out of the intellectual, and it becomes direct experience. The Buddha said, "Don't believe anything because I said it. Only believe it if you experience it for yourself." In Zen, we feel like the ultimate discernment comes out of our direct experience. So just as the Buddha said, don't believe him, don't believe me. Go find out for yourself.
Peter, in finding out for myself, I'm going through a koan study. Can you talk a little bit about how koan study is taking me to find this myself?
No, koan study isn't taking you anywhere.
Oh.
You wasted your time. No, look, what koans are helping us do is loosen our attachments, loosen our sort of conceptual templates with which we greet the world and relate to the world. And at some point, when those are sort of loosened enough, all of a sudden we're seeing the fresh, unvarnished reality, right? And the fresh, unvarnished reality does not have separation in it. Separation is a thing we create with our minds. So when we see that, This one body is revealed. We talk about the one body being revealed. Okay, and that happens sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, as I've talked about before. There's there's sudden enlightenment and there's gradual enlightenment, and but you see now, this is like if I were a ship captain, they'd have taken away my license by now. I'm like so far out in hazardous waters here. I am a ship captain. I'm an inland ship captain, but I can't go on the ocean.
So of course I should have remembered koans loosening our attachment, and I do experience that to some degree. And does that, working with a koan is not inconsistent with the excerpt that you sent out saying, you're not going to get anywhere. If you're getting anywhere, you're not sitting zazen. And so if I'm working on the koan and then, oh yeah, it's this or that, that's sort of accomplishing something. So does the excerpt that you sent out fit with sitting with koans?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. Look, it's the same thing as that. The koan is the ordinary mind koan, where Chow Cho says to Nanchuan, "What is the way?" And Nanchuan says, "The ordinary mind is the way." And Chow Cho says, "How will I know it when I see it?" And he says something like, "The great way is vast," and blah blah, blah blah blah, and then the punchline was not Chow Cho says, "Well, how if I can't know what it is, how can I go towards it?" And Nanchuan says, "If you go towards it, you're moving away from it," which is exactly that same teaching as that one that I shared this week. We can't go towards it. We want to. It's so tempting, but if we try to go towards it, we are going away from it. And if we are not trying to go towards it, that's when we are in the most receptive space, because the paradox is that the very intention of going towards kind of corrupts the space. Right, we're now clinging again. We're now attaching again. We're coming right back around a very small circle. And that's why we do many koans, because we love to attach, right? We are like, fly paper, like swinging some fly paper around, and it's going to stick to everything. That's how we act. That's how we move through the world. We're sticking everywhere, and constantly. And so we're coming back to the core, same thing. The same thing happens with shikantaza, with letting go. It's the same, it's just two kind of different ways of achieving the same result of not attaching, of not sticking, of just being there, and then that's why I encourage you, repeatedly, don't worry about Kensho, don't worry about Satori, because that the very fact that you're doing that, you're putting, a barrier in the road. As Nanchuan said, if you go after it, you're going further away from it. And I know that's hard. I mean, we like to attach to those things. So then we have to keep letting go, letting go, letting go. Whatever is right now is okay. And as Dogen says, and as others said, right now you are fully and completely enlightened. You just don't know it. Right? But we got all these little wheels turning, and we've got to let the wheels stop long enough for us to realize It's, you know, we don't become anything. We don't attain anything, but we stop long enough to see what's been there all the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Peter, I don't know if this is a question or I just, but, or just some asking for observations or whatever. But lately I've been noting more that, so, you know, it seems like there's different levels of the value of the practice. And part of, I tend to, you know, as I've mentioned before, just from the distant past, thoughts will come up about some negative thing that happened, and I tend to have too much of that going on, so it's sort of painful, you know. And so, you know, the practice of doing even breath counting or mindfulness in general, you sort of let go of all that, and that is definitely beneficial, but it's sort of beneficial in the psychological realm, sort of. And in a way, that's sort of what I've been focused on and as the benefit of practice. But it seems like there's the whole other level, you know, once you sort of let go of thoughts, which might be negative or positive or whatever, then there's still attachments to, you know, I don't know, a bird chirping, it might be beautiful, but then it goes away, you know. It seems like at some level there's like dukkha of just the unsatisfactoriness that I understand that Buddha was talking about of life, that, you know, so even if you're not having negative thoughts or whatever, there's still sort of an unsatisfactoriness because we tend to attach to everything. And so then it seems like this other level, the level of Zen, as opposed to mindfulness-based stress reduction, you know, is you're letting go of like everything. And so you're sort of, it's sort of dealing with this general dukkha phenomenon, and I don't know. So I'm just struck by sort of the difference between there's a psychological level at which this works, but it seems like the focus of Zen isn't really on the psychological level. That's just a side effect.
If I might, yeah, you know, that's absolutely right. I mean, if there was such a thing as heresy in Zen, mindfulness-based stress reduction would be heresy, right? Because it totally changes. You know, there are psychological benefits to Zen, many of them very powerful, but they're never the point. Whereas in mindfulness-based stress, they're always the point, right? And you know, and so. But what you say is also true. Look, that's the part of the fascinating thing is, you know, the Buddha spoke about impermanence. You just spoke about impermanence. You didn't use that word, but that's what you're talking about. That's an immutable law of the universe. Everything changes, everything extinguishes, right? Those are, you know, and there's no amount of practice that's going to change the laws of the universe. But the dukkha, the suffering, arises out of our clinging, out of our resistance to the impermanence. The impermanence never goes away, but our resistance can be transformed. And that in itself, you know, I always say, we cannot take these things too absolutely. Look, when it's a beautiful spring day, I start to attach to that day. And I have to catch myself and I have to let go. I have to kind of remind myself, oh, wait a minute, this is attachment, you know, and I'm gonna I'm gonna feel the pain when next winter comes, you know. I got to do that all the time. So this is not something that ends. We don't get to an end point. It's like, okay, now I've let go of everything, you know, nothing's going to touch me. No, but I'm also holding it lighter, so that it's easier to do that. You know, like I'm not attaching to things in the way that I might have at one time. I was like, oh, if I don't have this, you know, if I don't get a new car this year, the world's going to end. And, you know, and, you know, that's just, you know, terrible clinging. Now it's like, okay, might be nice to have a new car, might not, who cares, you know. If it comes, it comes, doesn't, you know, holding lightly. So I don't think that we necessarily achieve perfection in non-attachment, but that we loosen our grip enough that we can kind of constantly keep coming back and readjusting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Another, okay, yeah, it does. Another thing, it's related, I think. So, you know, we're doing the action, what you just talked about, you're doing the action of letting go. It seems like, you know, unless we're having in Kensho, you know, if there's still some distance, you know, between us and in reality, then our ego is sort of just letting go, and like that is the only thing that we are actively doing in a way. You know, I mean, we get pulled into other things, but we come back to just letting go. That's our intentionality. And that's sort of what we do in Shikantaza, you know, unless we're fully in Kensho, I think, you know, every time, you know, we're not doing anything else, but we are doing that. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I sort of followed you up right towards the end there, but yeah, you know, again, you know, these things are not as dichotomized as they sound, you know, and I think particularly some of the Asian teachers tend to speak in very absolute terms. And it's just not how I see the Dharma. I don't see the Dharma in absolutes. I don't see it in black and white, you know. More than 50 shades of gray are in the Dharma. You know, it's subtle and it's constantly moving. And, you know, again, that's one of our tendencies. We want to fix a point. We want to, you know, we want this kind of certainty. We want this reliability. We want, you know, and one of the things that the Dharma teaches us, no, certainty, reliability, those are myths, right? That we've got to let go of. Because that's not what reality is. Reality isn't certain and reliable. I mean, there might be a few laws of physics that are, but generally speaking, our experience of reality is very fluid. And we tend to resist that. You know, we want it in neat boxes. We don't want it messy. We want it, you know, the relative or the absolute. Don't give me that crap in the middle, you know, and yet it's not. And it shifts, right? So again, sometimes, you know, maybe if we're sitting shikantaza, our consciousness is more toward the absolute. And then the phone rings, boop, back to the relative, you know, and it can be that, it can be that simple and that fast.
So this is kind of a maybe a kind of a funky thing to talk about, but so I was sitting, obviously we were sitting a little while ago, and I just, what popped up is, jumping off the pole and the excitement of the unknown. It's kind of a strange thing. It was like, so, and now when I kind of live in letting go, there's a kind of excitement to it. And so I'm thinking, it's like as human beings, we gravitate, we have passion. And so one could say that is clinging, but one can also say that at some point we have, this is kind of bizarre, but there's this question of ecstasy, the ecstasy of the thrill, the kind of letting go. But then, this is kind of, just bear with me. Then, of course, when you, there's at some point where you're not even really thinking about anything. You're just kind of not there. You're not registering anything. But as humans, when you are registering something, there is so when you talk about the spring day, that's beautiful. It's like you remind yourself to not attach to it. And that's something that I try to practice, that if you're attaching to it, you're not living in the present moment. You're trying to maintain a construct of what it is that you thought you wanted, that you still want, even while life is going on. But there is the importance of, I don't know how to say this, but it's like enjoying this moment without being attached to it. We're humans. We're, it's like apathy doesn't feel like that's the human gift. Living is the human gift.
So can we enjoy a thing without clinging to it?
I think so, especially if you're,
What do I?
okay, so that's it. So
We just have to understand its ephemeralness,
yes.
and we can enjoy it more. If what I'm feeling about the spring day is like, oh, this is wonderful.
And boom, because
And
it's
I don't introduce into that, and oh my God, it's going to end. Now I've ruined the day. I don't care how nice the day is, but but I just like, okay, it's here. I don't know. One of our real conceits is that we know the future.
or we don't have
Right?
things should be, or what maximal is, or
We don't know anything, right? We don't know anything. We don't know if we're going to be here tomorrow. We don't know if the world's going to be here tomorrow. We think we do, and it's probably a pretty good chance, although the odds are diminishing rapidly. But that said, we make a whole set of assumptions, that we know. Again, this is the knowing as opposed to the not knowing. This is in front of me. It's wonderful. And I don't need any more.
so the wonder is in the moment.
Yeah.
Yep. And we can, as humans, we can enjoy. I'm just saying, not attach, but we're living in the moment is the gift.
Yes, it's enjoying and not attaching is a subtle art.
Yep.
Right. But so there's a very fine line there, and we may need to cross back and forth a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, I'm getting too attached. Oh, come back over here. Let go. Oh, I'm getting a little too attached. Let go. And it's a practice, and we get better at it over time also, to be able to just stay with something, appreciate it for what it is in the moment, and not transform it into something else.
Okay. So that is another knife's edge.
Yeah, we're constantly on the knife's edge. Look, and I think this is part of what the Buddha, one of the most important koans in my estimation, is where Shakyamuni holds up the single flower.
Yeah.
Right? pointing to in that moment. He's pointing to, right here, flower. You know, we don't need any more. We don't need explanation. We don't need, we don't need giant mountains. I don't know, whatever. We just right here, this moment, flower. You know? The flower is enough. And when we're in that really, when we were really in that open space, that flower can bring us to our knees.
Yep.
The direct experience is so powerful when we truly see a thing for what it is, that it can take our breath away. Right? And then in the next moment we go, oh boy, but this flower is going to die. I better get another one. We immediately, and we have to let go again. No, I just want to be here with the flower. I don't want to, I'm not looking at tomorrow or the next moment, just this moment. And in that moment, we will, sometimes we'll experience awe. But the opposite is also true. This is what I said, where I said, like the mind in Zen is like a mirror. And we don't necessarily get to make choices. So 1 minute we might be with the flower and in ecstasy. And in the next minute, we may be seeing the news from Ukraine and in tears. Right? So that's when we give it up, we give up control over all that stuff. We want to run a filter all the time. Yep, I want to feel the flowers, but I don't want to feel the horror of the children in Kyiv or something, but the deeper we go into Zen practice, we don't get to have a filter.
Okay.
We've got to take
what it is.
Got to take whatever, we become like a mirror. And very, one of the things that about Steph was he used to appear very mercurial. And Peter and Harris and I used to remark on it, how, oh my goodness, Steph will come into Zen one day and he's like, oh, I'm all excited about this. And I'll come in the next day, it's like, oh yeah, I'm all excited about that. And it was this very, it's like, why is he so mercurial? He's so mercurial because he's not attaching. And whatever is there is there. So today I'm excited about this. Tomorrow I'm excited about that. There's no, again, that filter isn't there, that attachment. Bernie Glassman was much the same way. So these guys can drive people nuts because it's like, I've got this great project. Oh, now I've got another great project. It's like, oh, how about, but this project over here, because they're just not sticking, and so you have to sort of learn to regulate that, because you can really drive everybody nuts. Okay, so Al, unless somebody has a burning question, I'm going to go get attached to the congressional hearings. I'm very interested in seeing what's going on there. And I think they're going to start the commentary very shortly. So, okay, so everybody be well. Have a good few days till, happy trails to you until we meet again.
You're showing your age, Peter. You're showing
Yeah.
Happy
Where am I going to
trails
hide my
to
age?
you.
I show it every minute. But John Scott probably doesn't know what we're talking about.
Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Creations are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Reality is boundless. I vow to perceive it. The enlightened way is unsurpassable. I vow to embody it. Thank you all. That was fun and interesting.
Thank
Well,
you
I-
so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.
Yes. Now to get upset. Okay.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Thank you. Have a good week.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.